William Wordsworth was a late poet, and in fact, most of his poems collected in the lyrical ballads are set in the countryside. But one specific poem is set in London, and it is upon Westminster Bridge. In this poem, Wordsworth, who came from the countryside, shows his awe, his love for the atmosphere that London can give him at dawn. He is on Westminster Bridge, and he is fascinated by the spectacle of the Houses of Parliament, the River Thames, and the beauty of this splendid city, the splendid capital. And when he describes the sun rising, he says that he has never seen such a wonderful sunshine as he is now seeing in London. It's the first time that the spectacle of the sun rising has given him so much pleasure as now that he is contemplating the sun rising upon London and the beauty of the city. The city is described as a terrific place, a wonderful place, and no activities are taking place, are being carried out at this peaceful moment. London seems to be sleeping, and the sun rises in an atmosphere of peace, of awe. The opposite description is given by a man who had always lived in London, and a man who knew London in all its terrible, worst aspects, such as William Blake. Just like Charles Dickens did, Blake describes London as a place of exploitation, especially the exploitation of children, and in fact he mentions the chimney sweeper and the image of these infants crying. You can hear the crying of adult people and especially children while you are walking down the streets of London. Blake also mentions blood. He mentions the fact that London is the capital of the empire, so in those palaces where the king, the queen, the prime minister live, that is the place where wars are planned and decided. That's why he mentions the soldiers and the fact that the blood of these soldiers makes the palaces unclean. These palaces are dirty with blood. There's a reference to a prostitute and the fact that London is the place where you can find brothels, where married men go and look for sex with these prostitutes. In particular, there's a prostitute who has just given birth to a child. This child will never have a father. He will probably be called a bastard because he doesn't have the right to have a proper family because he's the son of a prostitute. Marriage itself, which should be an important, a fundamental institution, is dirty because married men, especially Victorians, led a double life. They had a wife, they had kids, but they regularly visited prostitutes. And finally, in the first stanza, we find a reference to commerce. Everything has a market value in London. Each street is chartered. In each street you find shops, you find commercial activities. The Thames itself, the Thames is a river, so it should be a natural element. Not in this case, because also the Thames is used for making money, is used for commercial purposes. William Blake was an early romantic poet. He was a sort of multimedial artist because he was an engraver, and in fact he was able to paint and to engrave, especially wood. He was a poet, he was a musician. It's very easy to look for illustrations, pictures connected to each of his poems, and most of his poems look like songs. If we take, for example, The Lamb, the lamb is addressed to a sweet animal, a lamb, and there's a voice, which should be the voice of the poet, the speaking voice of the poet, who asks the lamb, "Little lamb, who made thee? Do you know who made thee?" He is referring to God. He is asking the little lamb if she knows who was his creator, that is God. The lamb does not know the answer, so the poet says, "I will tell you, little lamb. She is called by your name." And in fact, Jesus Christ called himself Agnus Dei, the Lamb of God, God's Lamb. And there's a connection between Jesus Christ, the act of creation, a child, a lamb, a poet. A poet, just like a child, has this power of imagination which makes him able to create new things, new words. So this is something a child shares with Jesus Christ, who is the creator of the universe, and the poet. The poet is also a creator because he has the power of imagination. The Lamb is one of the songs of innocence, but we know that for each song of innocence we can find the correspondent song of experience. The lamb corresponds to the tiger. What strikes us is that this poem has only questions, no answers. In the tiger, the protagonist is this fierce animal which is sublime. The definition of sublime was given by Edmund Burke in his essay on the sublime. The tiger burns bright in the forests of the night. The tiger is a terrible animal. Nobody knows who created the tiger, but the poet says we can imagine that even the creator who made the tiger was shocked. Even the creator probably repented for creating such a terrible, hateful animal as the tiger was. The tiger makes us think of evil, and the question posed by the artist, by the poet, by William Blake is, could the same God who made the lamb also make the tiger? Were good and evil created by the same creator? How can we understand that God made good and evil? The lamb If we have a look at another couple of poems, one taken from the Songs of Innocence and the other taken from the Songs of Experience, that is Infant Joy and Infant Sorrow. Let's first have a look at Infant Joy. Infant Joy is about the poet addressing a 2-day-old child, a newborn child, a baby who still cannot speak and still doesn't have a name, but the poet says, I will call you Joy, because you are joyful, because you are a newborn child, and you must be happy because you were born. If we have a look at Infant Sorrow, which is the corresponding Song of Experience, Infant Joy becomes Infant Sorrow. When the newborn baby is born to life, his parents, his mother, his father, are not happy. They weep, they cry, and the first thing the baby experiences is being wrapped around some clothes, which make him feel very uncomfortable. So this is what means being born into a dangerous world. The baby is sorrowful, the baby is unhappy, because he knows that now he belongs to this world, which is a world of dangers, a world of hate, a world of misery. Che cosa ho fatto? Ho parlato di 4 poemi presi a 2